So I'm recording this a bit off the cuff. It's been over a week now since the death of legendary British inventor Sir Clive Sinclair was announced, and like many other British computer nerds, his legacy had a profound effect upon me. Of course, he was responsible for getting home computers to the masses in the UK, first off with the ZX80, then ZX81, but ultimately with the ZX Spectrum range. Like many other Brits, I had a Spectrum. It was a computer that featured a lot in my childhood. Now, it wasn't the first computer I used, like many other young Brits in the 80s. My first real introduction, I should say, to home computers was the BBC Model B and Master, which I utilised at school. That's where I started using computers with software such as Granny's Garden, an infamous educational title. But it was the Sinclair Spectrum where I really learned to game. Yes, my first home computer was a Commodore 16. My father got it cheap, and it was fun. I enjoyed it, but the Spectrum loomed large. I had two friends at school with Spectrums, excuse me, one of whom, another young man called Robert, had his in his bedroom, and sometimes we'd go around there and we'd play games like Frank Bruno's Boxing, which was great fun. But more so my other friend Paul Kennedy, aka Kenko. Plenty of Saturday afternoons were spent round at his house, hunched up over his Spectrum in his bedroom, playing Robocop, Saboteur, R-Type. You know, these were formative gaming experiences for me. Sorry for the coughs. But yeah, eventually I got a Spectrum of my own, and it was great. Sure, I was fairly late to the Spectrum party when I got mine. I got the James Bond 007 action pack of the Plus 2A model with the ridiculously awful Magnum Light phaser. But it was a Spectrum of my own, and damn it, did I love it. In a strange way, getting the Spectrum at that time was amazing, because what you would know as the cover tape wars between the British Spectrum magazines were in full flow at that time. So rather than have to scrape together enough money to maybe buy one full price game every month and just have one game a month for £6 or £7 out of my monthly pocket money a month, I could get Your Sinclair, Sinclair User, and the occasional issue of Crash, because heresy as it is, I was never that big a fan of Crash, and pile up on the games. You know, those cover tapes provided me with ultimately dozens of games, most of them not too great. They weren't brilliant, that's why they ended up on cover tapes. Publishers were happy to shift them onto them because they weren't selling on budget. But there were a few absolute gems on there. And of course, another thing that came out of this was it was on the Spectrum where I really started to learn how computers worked. I started to program in BASIC and poke about a little bit with assembly, and it was great fun just opening up a magazine like Your Sinclair and going to their program pit stop page and typing in a listing and figuring out how it worked, and if I changed this and if I changed that, what would it do? And for me, that was Clive Sinclair's legacy to me and to an entire generation of young British people. It showed us what computers could do. It showed us what we could do with computers. And I really don't think that the British software industry, and indeed the world's software industry today, would be the same without Clive Sinclair's dedication to creating these mass market affordable home computers. Yes, he infamously hated the fact that the Spectrum was seen as a games machine and not a productivity machine, but that's what it did. It showed people how computers could be used. It helped build what we have today. If you look around at so many of the world's top software houses, there are Brits involved who cut their teeth on the Spectrum. Guys like Dave Perry, you know, this is the man who created the best-selling Mega Drive game of all time, Aladdin, a technical tour de force in Earthworm Jim. He used to code Spectrum games. The first time I clearly recall coming across his name in the credits of a game was the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles game on the Spectrum. You know, there are so many examples. You know, Rare Software came out of the Spectrum scene. You had the mega publishers like Ocean, who really built the whole licensed software industry, where you license films, comic books. You know, they built that part of the industry into something important, and it was all thanks to Clive Sinclair. And it's weird now he's gone, because that's a real pioneer gone, and I don't think the computer industry will ever see anyone like that again, or anything like that home computer boom of the 80s that the Sinclair, certainly in the UK, was such an important part of. And yeah, that's what the Sinclair Spectrum means to me. That's what Sir Clive Sinclair means to me. You know, if you read your Sinclair, he was Uncle Clive. We were Spectrums. He was Uncle Clive to us. He gave us this little grey Z80 based box of electronics, which was incredibly simple, yet capable of such complexity in comparison to what it was conceived to be able to do. It influenced so many of us, and I'm rambling now because I really don't know how to finish this, apart from to just say thank you, Sir Clive. The Spectrum was important, and yeah, thank you.